Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one.
The introduction. The night air in Hillcrest was thick with anticipation. The kind that clung to the lungs long after dusk had settled in. It was late October, one of those rare evenings when the clouds seemed to hang low, pregnant with the potential for rain. Streetlights cast a warm yellow glow, illuminating the sidewalks where shadows danced playfully, yet not without a sense of foreboding. In a quaint, two-story home on Vine Street, the Wilson family was preparing for their favorite time of the year, Halloween. Laughter echoed from inside as the children ran from room to room, their excitement palpable. But as night drew near, an unsettling calm descended over the neighborhood. At 10:47 p.m., a piercing scream shattered the night. It cut through the laughter and the joy, turning the crisp autumn evening into a cacophony of terror. Neighbors peered through their windows with bated breath, unsure of what they just heard. Moments later, the sounds of hurried footsteps filled the air. Someone was running. Officer David Ellis was one of the first responders to arrive. He stepped out of his cruiser, the sound of his boots crunching on the gravel driveway breaking the tense silence. As he approached the house, he noted the way the front door stood ajar, a stark contrast to the warm, inviting decorations that adorned it. Within, chaos reigned. Anna Wilson lay sprawled on the living room floor, her eyes wide open in shock. The vibrant colors of her Halloween costume were muted now, her outstretched hand reaching desperately toward a shadow that lingered in the flickering candlelight. The laughter from moments ago felt like a distant memory as the urgent call for detectives rang out across the radio waves. The victim, Anna Wilson, was a bright spot in the lives of those who met her. At 32, she radiated warmth and kindness, a dedicated mother of two and a reliable neighbor who could always be counted on for a cup of sugar or a listening ear. Her enthusiasm for life was infectious, a constant source of joy that brought together the families in her quiet suburban neighborhood. On that autumn evening, she was preparing to host her annual trick-or-treat party for the neighborhood kids, an event everyone looked forward to. As Officer Ellis knelt beside Anna, he noticed the crisp white of her ghost costume was stained with crimson, a stark reminder of the violence that had shattered the peace. Her Halloween decorations hung with dull indifference against the backdrop of a scene one hoped was only reserved for the movies. Photos framed on the walls depicted moments of joy. Anna baking with her children, their faces smeared with flour and laughter. Summer days spent at the park, her husband John's arm around her shoulder. Both. The paramedics arrived swiftly, but it was already too late. Anna's life had been snuffed out in an instant-town, unthinkable violation of safety that echoed in the stuttering breaths of her children, who were now in the care of a neighbor down the street. Detective Sarah Line arrived on the scene shortly thereafter. The flashing lights of the patrol cars painted a disorienting light across the sky as she stepped into the Wilson home. Greeted by chaos and a deep sense of unease, she took in every detail: the overturned coffee table, the crumbled candy wrapper strewn across the carpet, a half-finished bowl of popcorn haphazardly abandoned. In the stillness that followed, the stark reality set in. Anna was gone, leaving behind a family that would never be the same again. As the detectives cordoned off the area, a dreadful sense of urgency took hold. The killer was still out there, and time was of the essence. The crime scene. With the urgency in her veins, Detective Sarah Lang began to methodically assess the scene, while Officer Ellis cordoned off the area with bright yellow tape that fluttered in the cool breeze. The once vibrant home now felt like a mausoleum, reverberating with echoes of the life that had so recently filled it. The scent of burnt pumpkin candle lingered here, a stark juxtaposition to the grim reality playing out before. Clad in gloves, Sarah scanned the room, looking for anything that might tell the story of that fateful moment. Anna lay on her side, her lifeless form, a painful reminder of the fragility of life and the palpable fear of those who still called this neighborhood home. Blood pooled beneath her, darkening the carpet and staining her costume. The knife, an ordinary kitchen chef's blade, lay discarded on the floor nearby, the silver gleaming ominously in the dim light. Sarah stood slowly, her mind working through the possibilities. No signs of forced entry hinted that the killer might have been someone Anna knew, someone she had invited into her sanctuary, potentially under the guise of friendship. In that moment, the very walls of the home felt laden with betrayal, whispering secrets that only the dead could tell. A flicker caught her eye, a half-open back door leading to the garden. Rustled leaves trembling in the breeze. Instinct drove her to check the space, her heart racing with each cautious step. The door swung silently on its hinges, revealing a breathtaking display of autumn colors. But Sarah's keen eyes were not swayed by beauty. She noticed scuff marks nearby, the kind that didn't belong to the children's playful antics. A trail of disturbance leading further into the thicket. Returning to the living room, Sarah began cataloging evidence: the knife, a broken lamp, a toppled chair. The hum of voices outside grew louder as neighbors gathered, concern knitting their brows. She understood all too well the weight of their fear. They were now part of a community haunted by an unspeakable crime. The killer remained at large, prowling within the shadows, and the urgency of her work had never felt more pressing. The early investigation. The sun broke through the clouds the following day, a weak autumnal light casting a pallid glow over Hillcrest. As detectives and forensics experts combed through the Wilson home and the surrounding area, a mixture of anger and bewilderment simmered in the community. Just hours ago, laughter had filled the air, but now, residents moved through the streets with heavy hearts, casting wary glances at neighbors they once trusted. Detective Sarah Lang convened a meeting with her team at the precinct. The room buzzed with tension. Coffee cups were half full, a symbol of late nights spent piecing together the fraying edges of Anna's life. Sarah laid out the photographs of Anna's living room crime scene, reminding them of the once vibrant sanctuary that had turned into a place of horror. "We need to start with the basics," she declared, her voice steady. "We'll canvass the neighborhood, interview anyone who might have seen or heard something unusual last night. Our best lead is the timeline before the murder." Meanwhile, Officer Ellis began reaching out to Anna's family and friends. Their grief was evident as he carefully navigated the delicate balance between getting information and allowing them their mourning. Each conversation uncovered a thread that somewhat painted a fuller picture of who Anna was: dedicated mother, the supportive friend. And yet, as more questions unfolded, glimpses of tension also surfaced. Arguments with her husband over financial struggles, whispers of an extramarital affair. Nothing about this tragedy was as straightforward as it seemed. In the following days, the team's meticulous efforts bore tiny fruits. A neighbor recalled seeing a dark car parked suspiciously down the street the evening of Anna's Madeira sedan, with tinted windows that left just as the clock struck 10, moments before sirens filled the air. As Sarah compiled the information, an unsettling sense of dread gnawed at her. The evidence gathered so far painted a picture of a woman whose life had been shadowed by secrets, potentially even the very people she loved. With every interview and every detail gathered, the web spun tighter, leading her deeper into the heart of darkness that lay hidden in the folds of Hillcrest. The truth was coming, but it threatened to expose far more than a mere murder. The dead ends. Detective Sarah Lang couldn't shake the chill that clung to her as she revisited the evidence board on her wall. Streamers of red string crisscrossed beneath the faces of Anna's loved ones, a tangled mess depicting relationships and past grievances. But the more she looked, the more the pieces refused to fit, the leaden weight of confusion dragging her down. Days swept by with frustration as interviews launched toward roadblocks and unyielding answers. John Wilson, Anna's husband, was cooperative but unyielding, his demeanor both devastated and somehow distant, as though he was hiding pieces of his own story in the shadow. He had an Olympia meeting with colleagues that, while corroborated, felt too rehearsed, too lifeless to escape suspicion. Sarah could not dismiss the knot of anxiety growing in her gut. The elusive dark sedan, the phantom that haunted her thoughts, remained without a driver or connection. Every resident she spoke to had either been out trick-or-treating or glued to their couches watching horror movies, providing no clearer sightings of a suspicious figure. Describing the car yielded a spectrum of colors and makes, each witness vividly confident yet completely contradictory. Weeks slipped by like the leaves from the trees, each day leaving the neighborhood growing heavier with despair. Children had stopped playing outside, and the vibrancy that once filled the air felt buried beneath a shroud of uncertainty. Parents whispered behind closed doors, fear shadowing their conversations. Sarah could see the community withering. Their anxiety thickened the air like fog. On cold afternoon in the precinct, feeling a sense of desperation course in, Sarah requested a deep dive into the financial records of both John and Anna Wilson. As the team examined their history, it became clear that part of Anna's life had been burdened by hidden debts. Meanwhile, the results returned with startling news of a possible following by a long-lost friend from childhood. Someone recently back in town, and possibly harboring grudges of the past. But before they could explore this lead, another hindrance arose. The trail turned up dry. The friend couldn't be located, their home empty, without any forwarding address. As Sarah stared at the files in frustration, it was clear the more she tried to unravel the case, the deeper into the labyrinthine depths of dead ends she found herself trapped. The only certainty was that they were losing precious time, and the killer was still lurking in their midst. A break in the case. The tension in the precinct was almost palpable as Detective Sarah Lang gathered her team for yet another meeting. The frustration from previous weeks hung heavy over them, and whispers of complaints had begun to creep into the cracks of fatigue. They felt the weight of time pressing down on them, but it was in this darkness that a sliver of light unexpectedly broke through. In the small hours of the morning, Officer Ellis had pursued an anonymous lead from a concerned citizen who claimed to have seen something strange on the night of the murder. This lead had emerged from the gloom, a glimmer of hope in an otherwise stagnant investigation. After a long night, he returned with a lead that had everyone on high alert. As he relayed the details, Sarah felt a spark ignite. The witness reported seeing a figure lurking near the back of the Wilson home, just moments before Anna screamed. Someone dressed in black, slipping behind a cluster of bushes before fleeing the scene in that same enigmatic dark sedan. The witness had jotted down a few letters of the car's license plate, which could potentially lead them straight to the owner. "It's a start," Officer Ellis said, his eyes shining with renewed determination. "If we can track down that vehicle, we might finally get a name." Harnessing the momentum, Sarah tasked her team with running the partial plate through DMV records. As they combed through databases, illuminated by blue screens late into the night, the tension began to morph into anticipation. Hours later, they struck gold. The car was registered to a name long absent from Anna's life, Rita Callahan, a high school friend whose connection had been severed by time and distance. Now newly returned to Hillcrest. Quickly, they learned that Rita had posted on social media about reconnecting with Anna shortly before her death. Compounding the urgency was an unsettling pattern emerging from a volatile history. Anna had been the stronger of the two in their youth, both a protector and a beacon of friendship. But as the years passed, jealousy had brewed in the shadows. The team swiftly built a profile and coordinated a visit to Rita's home. Sarah felt the familiar rush of determination swell within her. They were drawing closer to the truth. The walls of the unseeing began to crack, and the reality that had eluded them for so long hovered just within reach. Rising from the ashes of dead ends, it felt as if for the first time, hope had re-entered their journey. The suspect. The evening was cool, and a blanket of twilight cloaked the homes along Willow Lane as Detective Sarah Light and Officer Ellis approached the modest two-story house marked by peeling paint and overgrown hedges. The air was thick with the weight of apprehension, their hearts pounding slightly faster with every step toward the door. Rita Callahan, the name echoed in whispers, could very well hold the key to unraveling Anna Wilson's tragic death. As they knocked, Sarah wondered what kind of conversation awaited them. Would Rita face them with defensiveness or openness? Elements of unpredictability in human nature never ceased to keep her on edge. After a few moments that felt stretched by gravity, the door opened to reveal a disheveled woman in her late 30s, her eyes wide with surprise, mirroring the evening's tension. Can I help you?" Rita asked, her voice laced with cautious curiosity. "Miss Callahan," Sarah began, her tone professional yet approachable. "We're detectives with the Hillcrest Police Department. We'd like to ask you a few questions about your friendship with Anna Wilson." Rita's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, a flicker of something unsettling crossing her features. But she stepped aside to let them in. The scent of stale coffee permeated the air, echoing a disorganized lifestyle filled with reminders of both sadness and the passage of time. As they settled into the cramped living room, the conversation meandered cautiously. Rita described her attempts to reconnect with Anna, the long-lost bond rekindled over messages and brief meetings. She spoke of cherished memories, shared secrets, laughter, and companionship. But Sarah's instincts sensed a dissonance threading through those words, a veil that didn't quite hide the shadow of something darker. With each question, Rita's demeanor shifted from nostalgic to anxious, from defensive to evasive. When pressed on her whereabouts the night of the murder, her answers were contradictory, full of stutters and half-hearted explanations of being at the grocery store, before discovering Anna had been killed, suspicion crept into Sarah's days, sharpening her view of the woman seated before her. "You mentioned being in touch with Anna recently. But what do you think happened leading up to her death?" Rita swallowed hard, her eyes darting to the window as if searching for an escape. "You can't see how it would have anything to do with me. We were just catching up." Eluding her gaze, the cracks in her facade were beginning to show. But just as Sarah felt the urge to press further, the sound of police radio crackled through her own thoughts. An urgent update from her team back at the precinct. A witness had just surfaced, and they needed to talk. Time was running out, and as Sarah stood to leave, she felt the grip of a hunch tightening around her. Rita Callahan was not just a childhood friend. She was a suspect, potentially grasping tightly to the threads of guilt woven into the fabric of Anna's untimely demise. The trial. The courtroom buzzed with an undercurrent of tension as the trial of Rita Callahan commenced. Rows of seats filled with anxious family members and community members and audience, collectively holding its breath, as though each person shared a piece of Anna Wilson's story. The bright overhead lights seemed to amplify the gravity of the moment, glaring down on those who had come to see justice served. Detective Sarah Land sat among the spectators, her heart a mix of hope and dread. The case against Rita had been built methodically. The evidence of motive, a previously toxic friendship, and the partial license plate tying her to the scene. That fateful night painted a dark but compelling narrative. The state's attorney opened with a powerful statement, expertly weaving the events leading to Anna's death into a tapestry of betrayal and jealousy that resonated with everyone present. As details of the timeline unfolded, Rita's jealousy, her troubled life after Anna's success, each snippet only added to the air of anguish surrounding Anna's absence. The prosecutor laid out a methodical map of evidence, calling upon several witnesses. Neighbors testified about their interaction with Anna the days before her murder, painting a picture of a woman filled with hope and preparing for a joyful Halloween celebration, all while their whispers about Rita's bitterness echoed through the courtroom. Yet, on the other side of the aisle, Rita's defense attorney made a passionate appeal, painting her client as a victim of circumstance, a woman caught unprepared by the emotional upheaval of rekindled old wounds. There was no physical evidence tying her to the crime beyond circumstantial shadows, she argued, attempting to sow doubt in the minds of the jury. The strategy hinged on the idea that Anna's life was more complicated than the simplistic narrative of a friend-turned-killer. As the trial progressed, Rita sat balled in a cocoon of anxiety, glancing at the jury and then down at her hands, her eyes betraying a whirlwind. Notion, right? The emotional weight of the courtroom was overwhelming, and Sarah could see it etched into the faces of those present. They were haunted by grief, but also waiting for resolution. An answer to the question that clung to their hearts. Why had this happened? Finally, the moment arrived when the jury was instructed to deliberate. The judge excused everyone, leaving Sarah in the still silence of the courtroom, her thoughts rerouting through the evidence one more time. Each detail, each relationship had been clawed at until it bared its underbelly, and yet the question of motives still felt muddled. A day passed, agonizingly slowly. When the jury filed back into the court, tension crackled in the air. The foreman announced a verdict, clear in voice yet heavy on gravity. guilty of second-degree murder. The courtroom gasped collectively, while tears streamed down the faces of Anna's family. As Rita was led away in handcuffs, a murmur moved through the crowd, relief and grief intertwined, knowing that while justice had been served, the scars of this tragedy would linger in their hearts for years to come. Detective Lang, while relieved, felt a heaviness washing over her. A lingering question remained. What price did friendship exact when shadowed by jealousy, and how many lives were irrevocably altered because? The aftermath. The crisp air of late November settled over Hillcrest, the triumph of justice tainted by somberness as the community began to process the harrowing roller coaster that had unfolded. The autumn leaves, vibrant and fiery, had long since withered, swept away by cold winds that whispered reminders of law. The Wilson home stood vacant, enveloped in a profound silence, its once vibrant life reduced to echoes of laughter, now replaced by unrelenting sorrow. In the weeks that followed the trial, the neighborhood attempted to regain its footing, but the specter of Anna's murder loomed large, casting shadows across the community. The annual Halloween party had been canceled, replaced by whispered conversations and anxious glances. Children, once allowed to roam free in the streets, now clung closer to their parents, as if realizing the world was fraught with pointed edges they could not yet grasp. Detective Sarah Lan routinely found herself walking those familiar streets, the weight of unresolved feelings trailing behind her like a shadow. Each child's laughter that passed fell flat against the memory of Anna's joyful spirit, and the lives irrevocably altered by jealousy and rage. The aftermath of Rita Callahan's conviction rippled through Hillcrest, inspiring some to seek counseling, others to form support groups, local forums for collective grief and shared healing. Sarah marveled at the resilience of the human spirit, even in times of anguish. She attended a candlelight vigil in Anna's honor, watching as members of the community gathered together under flickering lights, their faces illuminated with a mix of sadness and hope. Suddenly, life seemed to cling to memory, both honoring Anna and embracing the connections forged through shared sorrow. Meanwhile, John Wilson struggled under a heavy cloak of grief, navigating single parenthood with uncertainty. The warmth of Anna's presence faded with each empty seat at the dining table. Determined to keep her spirit alive, he decided to convert their home into a community center dedicated to nurturing childhood, creativity, and safety, a lasting legacy for their children and for Anna. With each rainbow mural painted on the walls, he felt he was preserving a part of her vision for the smiles that had once filled their home. But there remained an unshakable question gnawing at Sarah's heart. Rita's conviction had settled the case, yet a deeper inquiry lingered. What circumstances had driven a friendship to such tragic ends? Sarah understood that just as the fallen leaves inform the richness of the tree's roots, so too did the complex emotions and histories of human relationships unveil the intricate tapestry of life, with its capacity for both love and pain. As the days turned to weeks, the community began to reclaim its spirit. Step by step, light returned amidst the shadows. The residents learned to navigate their ache while keeping Anna's memory alive. And in the stillness, Sarah found solace in knowing that even through immense struggles, the threads of connection continued to weave through the very fabric of their lives, binding them together in the face of unimaginable darkness. Reflection. As months rolled on, The chill of winter seeped into Hillcrest, a seasonal shift that mirrored the community's ongoing recovery from turmoil. Detective Sarah Line found herself drawn to the haven of her past beat, walking amongst the quiet streets where a sense of normalcy began to blossom once again. While conversations still echoed with sorrow, there was an unmistakable resilience blooming among the neighbors, who now bore a shared history, their lives irrevocably changed by a single act of violence. Sarah often reflected during these solitary strolls. In the aftermath of such calamity, she had seen fear morph into strength. The candlelight vigil had foreshadowed something beautiful, a community that could galvanize amidst tragedy. The laughter of children, once hushed, was gradually reclaiming its space, burgeoning with renewed strength. Even Rita Callahan's conviction, while a source of closure, sparked an undeniable contemplation. How many friendships sat on the precipice of such despair? How often did petty grievances develop into monstrous actions? While the trial had punched a hole in the darkness, it had also brought forth an essential truth: the fragility of human connection.